The rain wasn't falling so much as it was attacking. A relentless, icy barrage that turned the city into a smeared watercolor of neon and shadow. Inside his cab, Leo was a king in a dry, dimly lit castle. The rhythmic thump of the wipers was his metronome, the hiss of tires on wet asphalt his royal fanfare. It was 2:17 a.m., the witching hour for taxi drivers, a time for drunks, insomniacs, and lost souls. He was about to call it a night, his back aching from 12 hours of shifting and braking when he saw her. A figure, pale and indistinct, under the awning of a derelict brick building that once housed a textile mill. No umbrella, no coat, just a dark dress that clung to her in the punishing downpour. Leo sighed. A fare was a fare, especially this close to packing it in. He pulled the yellow cab to the curb, the tires sending up a curtain of oily water. She slid into the back seat without a word, bringing with her the profound chill of the storm and something else, a scent, not unpleasant but strange, like ozone after a lightning strike, and beneath it, the faint, clean smell of a deep, still lake. "Where to, miss?" Leo asked, catching her eyes in the rearview mirror. They were wide, dark, and impossibly deep, like looking into a well at midnight. She gave an address on the other side of the city, in a neighborhood of old, sprawling houses that backed onto the river. Her voice was a whisper, almost swallowed by the sound of the rain on the roof. Leo nodded, punched the location into his GPS, and pulled back into the desolate stream of the night. The drive was silent, punctuated only by the swish of the wipers and the low hum of the heater, which Leo had cranked up. The woman in the back was a statue. He snuck glances at her reflection. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed on the window, but she didn't seem to be looking at the passing shops or streetlights. It was as if she was staring at the rain itself, or through it. He tried to make conversation, the driver's habitual offering. "Nasty night to be out without a coat." Silence. "Almost there now. Big old houses out by the river. Nice area, nothing." A peculiar unease began to prickle at the base of his skull. It wasn't just her silence, it was the quality of it. It felt heavy, dense. The air in the cab grew colder despite the heater blasting. That clean, watery smell intensified, filling the small space until Leo felt he was breathing in fog. He focused on the road, on the yellow lines emerging from the gloom. The streets grew wider, the houses larger and further apart, shrouded by ancient, dripping trees. The GPS announced his arrival at the destination. He pulled into a long, winding driveway leading to a grand, Victorian-era home. It was completely dark, not a single light in any window. "This the place?" Leo asked, putting the car in park. He turned around. The back seat was empty. He blinked, his heart giving a single hard thump against his ribs. What? He'd been watching the road, but only for a few seconds. There was no way she could have gotten out that quickly without him hearing the door open and close. He scanned the dark driveway, the manicured lawns. Nothing moved but the rain. "Hello?" he called out, his voice sounding small and foolish inside the cab. No answer, just the relentless tattoo of rain on the roof. A cold knot of dread tightened in his stomach. He fumbled for the interior light switch and flicked it on, flooding the back seat with a weak, yellowish glow. The seat where she had been sitting was soaked. Not damp from wet clothes, but utterly drenched as if a bucket of water had been poured onto the upholstery. A small pool of it was already gathering on the floor mat, dark and placid. The clean lake water smell was now overpowering, cloying. "What the hell?" Leo whispered, his mind racing. A prank? Some kind of bizarre robbery tactic? But she hadn't taken anything. She was just gone, and had left a small ocean in his back seat. He got out of the cab, the rain immediately soaking his shoulders. He circled the car, checking the doors. All still locked from the inside. He peered into the back, his breath catching. The wet patch on the seat was perfectly formed, a detailed impression of a human body. The curve of shoulders, the dip of a waist, the distinct outline of two thighs. It was chillingly precise. Shivering, he got back into the driver's seat. He needed to get out of there. He slammed the car into drive and sped back down the driveway, his hands trembling on the wheel. He drove aimlessly for a few blocks, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear, before pulling over under a bright street lamp. He turned, half expecting the water to be gone, for it to have been a trick of the light, a stress-induced hallucination. It was still there. The water on the fabric seemed thicker now, almost gelatinous. And it was moving, not sloshing with the motion of the car, but shifting, coalescing. The perfect impression of the body was slowly losing its form, the water drawing inward, beating up into a single central mass. Leo watched, frozen in a kind of horrific fascination, as the droplets quivered and merged. The puddle on the floor mat began to shrink, the water retreating backwards, flowing up the side of the seat and joining the main pool. It was defying gravity. It was impossible. The mass of water on the seat began to rise, pulling itself upward like a slow, liquid fungus. It took on a shape, a vague, shimmering column. Leo could see the street lamp through it, distorted and wavering. Two darker patches formed near the top, like eyes. A face, a water face, blank and expressionless, turned toward him. Leo screamed, a raw, ragged sound torn from his throat. He fumbled for the door handle, his fingers slick with panic, and tumbled out into the rain. He stumbled backwards, falling onto the wet pavement, his eyes locked on the thing in his cab. It was still forming, growing more defined. It had shoulders now, the suggestion of arms. It raised one shimmering, liquid limb and pressed it against the window. Where it touched the glass, a bloom of condensation spread, and for a terrifying second, Leo saw the clear imprint of 5 fingers before they dissolved and ran down the pane like tears. Scrambling to his feet, he turned and ran. He didn't look back. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs gave way, collapsing in the doorway of a closed bakery. He huddled there, soaked and sobbing, watching the empty street from which he'd come. Nothing followed. After what felt like an eternity, his breathing slowed. The rational part of his brain, the part that had navigated the city for 20 years, began to reassert itself. A panic attack, a hallucination. You're tired, Leo. You're overworked. You saw a wet seat and your mind ran away with you? It had to be. The alternative was unthinkable. Cautiously, he stood up. His cab was still parked under the street lamp a block away, a lonely yellow island in the night. He had to go back. It was his livelihood, his home away from home. He had to see. He approached it like a man approaching a sleeping predator, step by hesitant step. The rain had eased to a drizzle. He reached the driver's side door, his heart hammering against his ribs. He forced himself to look inside. The back seat was dry, bone dry. The upholstery was its usual faded gray, worn thin in places. The floor mat was clean. There was no smell of lake water, no chill in the air. Just the familiar faint scent of old coffee and synthetic pine from the little tree air freshener dangling from the mirror. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in Leo's throat. Relief, warm and dizzying, washed over him. It was a hallucination. He was cracking up. He'd see a doctor, take a week off. But for now, he was safe. His cab was just his cab. He slid into the driver's seat, the familiar comfort of it grounding him. He took several deep, shaky breaths. He looked at himself in the rearview mirror. His face was pale, his eyes wide with residual fear. He ran a hand through his wet hair. And in the mirror, just behind his own reflection, he saw it. A ripple. A distortion in the air of the back seat like heat haze off summer asphalt. Then a single perfect drop of water welled up from the very center of the seat cushion. It hung there, quivering, catching the light from the street lamp outside. It grew. Another drop seeped up from the fabric beside it, and they merged. Then another and another. A dark patch was spreading across the seat, not from the top down, but from the inside out, as if the very foam within the cushion was weeping. The blank, water-formed face began to materialize again, slower this time, more deliberate. The 2 dark eyes settled on his reflection in the mirror. This time, it didn't just watch. The radio, tuned to a static-laced oldies station, crackled. The music dissolved into the sound of white noise, which then deepened, morphing into a low, gurgling rush. The sound of water flooding a narrow space. A whisper, wet and choking, emanated from the speakers, weaving through the sound of the pouring rain. You took me home. Leo couldn't move. He was paralyzed, trapped in the driver's seat of his own personal nightmare. He stared into the mirror, into the thing's impossible eyes. The passenger wasn't gone. She had never left. She was just waiting for him to come back. And now she was ready for the next part of the journey.